Sports Cavalcade. If I had a home in Arizona's Valley of the Sun, today is the day I'd want to try to sell it. Cloudless skies, visibility almost unlimited, temperatures in the mid-70s. Conditions good for real estate sales and NHRA Championship drag racing. Today from Firebird Raceway near Pheonix, Arizona, we bring you the final eliminations of the Motorcraft Ford Arizona Nationals, the second race on the 18-race NHRA Winston Drag Racing Tour. Hello everyone, I'm Steve Evans. A perfect day, a huge crowd, and what racing we saw a short time ago. First round of eliminations in all three of the professional categories. There was a big surprise in Top Fuel, one in Pro Stock, and a major shocker in the funny car category. Al Hoffman, who last year ran underfinanced, undercrewed, hand-to-mouth, came up with a new crew chief, Tom Anderson, a few more spare parts, and fired up a career best 5.28 second elapsed time. As you can see from this replay, right at the finish line, lots of smoke out of the exhaust pipes. Fortunately, no fire. But that told only one story, big problems. There is also, well, some bad news. The bad news is Al Hoffman must race John Forth in the round to come. The good news is Al Hoffman will have lane choice over John Forth. So in the Hoffman pit area, they are hurriedly installing a new bullet in the funny car and will be ready for round 2 action. Now, what happened in Top Fuel Eliminator Round 1 action, you ask? Well, some unexpected things. Here's Brock Yates to tell you all about it.
Well, Steve, as you say, you can always expect the unexpected in this kind of competition, and this big story involved this automobile, the car of Gary Ormsby, the 1989 Winston Top Fuel champion, who red-lighted, a terribly rare occasion for Gary, and obviously a big disappointment.
Yeah, Brock, this definitely wasn't the highlight of my career today, you know. These things happen, and it was unfortunate. I thought when I staged the car, it was really a staging miscalculation on my part that created the red light. I thought I was in deep, and the light flickered on me after I'd set up, and the stage light. Once you're set up, you know, you're programmed to go the minute you see the flicker of any yellow up there, and that's just the way it is today.
Well, Brock, the third surprise here at the Arizona Nationals is here in Bob Glidden's pit. The winningest driver in NHRA history, 79 titles to his credit. He's been in the final every year here at the Arizona Nationals. He won last year. He won't win this year. The pit is empty. Where is the car? It's in the trailer, ready for the long trip back to Indianapolis. What happened? Well, Bob tried to make up a little bit of performance on that first round. Ekman had him by about 0.05 of a second. He guessed wrong. The car shook the tires. He's out of competition. So with Bob Glidden out of the competition, the door is wide open in Pro Stock for 3 drivers. Warren Johnson with a fine 730, Tony Christian with a 735, and don't forget Darrell Alderman, who qualified with a 721. Any one of these could be the winner. Well, it's about time for Top Fuel. Let's go to Steve.
Well, it's no secret that Kenny Bernstein's first year in Top Fuel in 1990 was less than successful. But he's got a brand new chassis from Al Swindle up at Tacoma, Washington, very much like the one Tommy Johnson Jr. is driving, Don.
Well, and also, you know, Kenny has run good. He's made some good 4-second runs, but not in an official race. So he is definitely capable.
And Dale Armstrong feels that this new chassis is allowing him to use all the power that he can build. And that was something that he could not do last year. It would just smoke the tires if he leaned on it too hard. Kenny Bernstein is truly a giant in motorsports. He has the drag racing team, a NASCAR Winston Cup team, and an Indianapolis car to run at the Brickyard this coming May. Tommy Johnson Jr. is just a good kid having a good time.
Well, Steve, he almost wasn't having a good time because he just barely made it here. There's a little lack of funds, but they finally got it all together, and he's out here racing, and we all wish him well.
Tommy Johnson Jr. in the car owned by Larry Frazier. He is in the far lane. In the near lane, Kenny Bernstein. Bernstein away first. And Jr. cannot catch him. A tremendous reaction time by Kenny Bernstein. He was only 200ths away from a perfect light of 5:16 elapsed time at 272.14 miles per hour. So Bernstein goes to the final 4. All right, Tom McEwen in the far lane. Joe Amato in the near lane. Amato qualified in the number 2 position. McEwen was down in the number 10 spot, so it's Amato certainly the best bet on paper. Both of them running the small front wheels pioneered by my friend Big Daddy Don Garlett. And here we go. You're riding on the Valvoline Special with Joe Amato.
Well, can Joe overcome that pain?
Amato never sees Tom McEwen and goes to the final four at 5:02, 279 miles per hour. McEwen had traction problems right off the line. The competition we're seeing today was set originally for 1 week ago, but something bad happened right here in the left lane. Charlie Allen, the track owner, had completely rebuilt the concrete launch pads, trying to make them perfect. But apparently, some badly mixed concrete started to come apart. Several of the alcohol cars crashed in the left-hand lane. None of them could get any traction. By the way, there were no injuries. But NHRA and Charlie Allen said, hold it. They canceled the event. We've been rained out before, but never laned out. Now it's been rebuilt again and appears to be absolutely perfect, as good as we found anywhere in the country.
Well, the work has been done, and according to the times today, the two lanes are just about equal. Everyone seems very happy, especially the racers.
A real interesting pair up next. Rookie drivers with very experienced help. First of all, there's Corey McClanathan coming out of the top alcohol dragster ranks, buying a car from Darrell Gwynn, the machine that Frank Hawley drove for the Gwynn family last year. Darrell is serving as an advisor to Corey McClanathan. Then, opposite Corey is Craig Smith from Washington State. He has brought back two-time Winston Top Fuel Dragster champion Gary Beck as his crew chief. And some have commented on how quickly Craig Smith has adapted to these cars. Well, when you're a professional crop duster pilot, not much scares you. Corey McClanathan has made hundreds of runs down the quarter mile in sportsman cars, including high-powered alcohol dragsters. So you might give the driving edge just a little bit to him, just for as many times as he has left the starting line. So it's the Mac Attack from California versus the man from Washington State, Craig Smith in the far lane.
And for those of you that don't remember Gary Beck, his specialty was fuel systems, and that's how he made the good runs in the old days.
Staged and ready here in round two, top fuel action. Both drivers with lots of problems. Craig Smith wins it with some evil-looking fire out of the pipes. There's an engine damage there. Corey McClanathan never really got a hold of the racetrack. Smoked the tires almost the entire quarter mile. Next up, Frank Hawley versus Don the Snake Prudhomme. And what a race this ought to be. Both of them recorded 5.02 elapsed times in the first round.
And it sure is great to see the Snake running good. He, like Bernstein, did not have a good year last year, and so now the car seems to be running great, and this is going to be a good race.
In a still young career, Craig Smith, for the first time you're going to the Final Four at a big race, and you had to do it by coming from behind.
Yeah, every time this thing's running, it's running a little better every time. Gary's really picking up on the thing.
Well, you're going to have to get out of the 520s now and get into the 50s if you're going to continue this great day.
That's what I told Gary last night. We're going to have to forget about all of these 505s and say we got to go right into 496s and run with Gary and Joe.
How comfortable are you racing this kind of competition? Are you nervous at all?
Not really, no. It's a lot of fun. It's just fun being out here with these guys.
There's Jerry Gwynn backing up Frank Hawley. You can see the concern on his face. They have a formidable competitor in the other lane.
Oh, absolutely. Don Prudhomme 2 weeks ago made the final round of the Winter Nationals, and he crashed into the Krieger 4-second club at 4.93 seconds, a number that no one has equaled here at Pheonix all weekend long. Now, Frank Hawley, however, is the #1 qualifier. The man from Gainesville, Florida, who operates the drag racing school at Gainesville Raceway, qualified at 4.96 seconds and beat Dick LaHaye in round #1. Don Prudhomme didn't qualify quite as well, a 5.09, but he did defeat Connie Collada in round #1. So this could be, well, quite a drag race, Don, and certainly a couple of very popular drivers, the Snake and Frank Hawley.
Well, I spoke to Prudhomme in the pits, and it's really great, Steve, to see him up for a change. Last year he was down. You know, he knew his car wasn't running right, and he just didn't think they were going to get it running right. But today, he's running tough.
And he's got a new crew chief by the name of John Medlin, and that guy has given him a lot of confidence. Prudhomme loses traction, blows the tires off, and Frank Hawley storms to 5.00, 5 seconds flat at a big speed here in Arizona, 283 miles per hour. Let's go to Brock with the winning crew chief.
Ken Benny, 5 flat, not all that bad, right? You got to feel good about that?
Pretty good. Yeah, well, that's all we're trying to do is run 5 flat.
Okay. All right. That's what the man said.
Ken Benny, a man of few words. And now the pairings for the Top Fuel Final Four. We have Frank Hawley versus Craig Smith. Frank Hawley has lane choice. On the other side of the ladder, we have Kenny Bernstein versus Joe Amato, and Joe Amato has the lane choice. Let's go to the far end with Steve.
Well, they call Frank Hawley the professor. Let's see how good he really is. What do you think it ran, Frank?
Well, it seemed to me that it ran about as good as it did the first time. Maybe, I don't know, I'll tell you, I was kind of concerned about Prudhomme because...
5 flat.
Well, that's pretty close, if I can guess within a couple hundredths. Right. My guess is he might have smoked the tires because I saw him for an instant and he disappeared. And lane choice, I think, might end up being more of a factor later on this afternoon than we earlier thought.
Bill Schultz, JB Racing, the In-N-Out Burger Over the Hill Gang funny car, and he himself adjusting the valves. Before we get to funny cars, however, we have Pro Stock. And these cars, Don, few people appreciate, I think, how hard they are to drive.
Yes, they are. The driver is very busy in that car for that 7.5-second ride.
And you've got about 1,000 horsepower and a very short wheelbase, and nobody drives them better than Butch Leal, the California Flash, now out of Columbus, Ohio, the whole shot expert. Jerry Ekman, Ventura, California, he came right down to the wire, the Winston finals last year, in that battle of 4 to determine who was the Winston champion. Ekman relies on a whole lot of horsepower. Both of these are Pontiac automobiles, and don't be surprised if Leal isn't up the mark first. We'll be watching the reaction times.
Well, these two cars, Steve, are very evenly matched. A 738 for Ekman in the first round, a 739 for Leal. But Ekman has lane choice, and he has put Leo in the lane that has been repaired. So we're fixing to find out if it makes any difference.
Right now, both drivers just staring at that yellow light on the Christmas tree. When it flashes, they are gone. Leo with a hole shot. Is it big enough? No, it isn't. Bill Orndorff, the car owner, says, boy, that was close. Ekman powers by at 738 to a losing 741. Both cars 186 miles per hour. And Don, you can clearly see Leo leave first in the white car.
Yes, I was very impressed with Leo's leave. I was also very impressed as he drove over the repaired part of the racetrack. The car never stumbled. It never did anything. What the difference was in this car race, Steve, was the fact that Ekman had more horsepower at the end of the track and just pulled a little bit more mile an hour. Not much, a very close race, but you know, close only counts in horseshoes.
And nuclear weapons. Jerry Ekman, by a couple of feet, goes to the Final 4. All right, here is Ricky Smith, the STP Pontiac, and he has the dubious honor of racing the man inside this Dodge Daytona, where our camera is Darrell Alderman, the 1990 Winston Pro Stock champion from Lexington, Kentucky, the #1 qualifier here. He won at Pomona 2 weeks ago. He was the #1 qualifier there. Nobody has to tell Ricky Smith from King, North Carolina, the way to beat this man today is to drill his lights out on the starting line. But he's also a very good driver, so how do you do that?
Well, you have to squeeze that starting system right to the nth degree because this man runs good down course with that Mopar.
We see Alderman's right hand on the tallest shift lever. As soon as that car leaves the starting line, they'll try to yank second gear. Ricky Smith over the far side hopes to catch Alderman napping off the starting line. No, sir, Alderman is right on the tree. Ricky Smith over-anticipates the tree and fouls away this second round encounter. Darrell Alderman goes to the round of 4 with a 733 at 188 miles per hour. It doesn't matter what Ricky Smith ran because he left a red light, foul start. He's disqualified at the start.
Here we see it. Ricky Smith tried to squeeze the tree too tight. He knew he had to take a starting line advantage if he was going to beat Alderman, and he took his shot, but he lost. And Alderman drove on to a fine 733. Our next pair of pro stocks, Tony Christian and Don Beverly. Beverly has his hands full.
Don Beverly from Chester, Virginia, not only drag races, but also has a Busch Grand National stock car team driven by Jimmy Hensley. Tony Christian, Sarasota, Florida, was out of the sport for a little over a year, came back at the Chief Nationals and thumped the entire field. He is quite a good driver. He's so big and so strong and so excited. I'm surprised sometimes he doesn't just rip the shifter right off the transmission somewhere down the middle of the racetrack. And it's no contest. Tony Christian all the way to 737, 186. Beverly, well, I don't know. Terrible reaction time. I mean, something obviously distracted him. A 751 at 185 miles per hour. He was 2/10 away from the green light.
Yeah, Steve, it was like they were in two different car races. But our next pair of pro stocks are Warren Johnson versus Larry Morgan. Now, if we look back in earlier qualifying, these cars are very closely matched. A 734 for Morgan and a 731 for Johnson. So that gives Johnson a slight performance edge. However, reaction time means everything.
A lot of people will tell you they think that Warren Johnson should have won the title last year. He had a few problems, prevented him from winning some races. Maybe he should have, and all of those problems were on the starting line, be they driver or mechanical. That's where they happen. He has tremendous reliability. The engines they build themselves in the state of Georgia. He's up against Larry Morgan in that far lane, who Tony Christian says will be beaten. We'll see. Morgan's there. Dead even. Christian is right. Warren's son Kurt looks on, says, "Attaboy, Dad." 7:33 to a 7:35 put Johnson in the round of 4.
Well, that's the best speed we've seen out of Pro Stock, 188.44. Tremendous. So that brings us to the pairings of the final 4 for Pro Stock. Warren Johnson versus Tony Christian. And Johnson has the lane choice. On the other side, Darrell Alderman versus Jerry Ekman. And Alderman has the lane choice. Steve?
I don't know how your confidence level is, but Tony Christian certainly had a lot of confidence in you. He had you the winner before you ever raced.
Well, Tony and I go back a long way as far as racing, and we really like to race each other because usually it's a really good tight race.
And the General Motors car has something to prove here. This race has always been won by a Ford or a Dodge.
Well, we got one of them out of the way. There's only one more to go, isn't there?
They will divide their own forces, though, next round when Tony does indeed race Warren.
Well, Warren Johnson is certainly up to date for this race, and maybe the General Motors car will win. We'll be back with the second round of Funny Car at the Motorcraft Ford Arizona Nationals.
Wednesday on Sky Sports, American football, the Chiefs against the Raiders.
Well, if it's tire smoke and ground pound in action you crave, Fuel Funny Cars are up next here at the NHRA Motorcraft Ford Arizona National.
And it would look like on paper that Jim White has definitely got an advantage over Mark Oswald. But you got to remember something. Mark Oswald, former driver for Candies and Hughes, is setting in last year's winner at this race. Jim White, the current national record holder, has run 5.25 seconds at this race. And of course, the 5:56 by Mark Oswald is no match for that. Meanwhile, Steve Evans is back in Kenny Bernstein's pit.
On later examination of the cylinder head of the Bernstein dragster, only one spark plug blew out. You can see the threads are here for this one. It was in the head. We just couldn't see it down there. And this one completely stripped all the threads out and is somewhere probably on another planet. Now, Dale Armstrong says the reason this is happening is they're so precise, they index the spark plugs. In other words, they make sure the electrode is facing the same direction every time it goes in. And that requires going through those threads a lot and honing them out. And apparently it weakens the threads to the point a plug blows out. And Dale says, I don't even know if the process is worth it. Well, obviously it probably isn't if this is the end result after a while.
Well, Steve, you're probably right. Aluminum will only take so much punishment, and obviously they're putting a little bit too much pressure on those heads. Meanwhile, back on the starting line, it's Jim White versus Mark Oswald. Second round Funny Car action.
And Jim White is driving the beautiful Dodge Daytona, sponsored by Hawaiian Punch and a variety of other Procter & Gamble products. Originally from Tulsa, Oklahoma, now living in Los Angeles. Some people have said, including moi, he's a win looking to happen. Mark Oswald has won a number of national events, formerly for the Candies and Hughes team, and now he's in an interesting situation. There will be 2 in-and-out hamburger cars, one in the west and one in the east, and he'll fly back and forth and drive both automobiles. The driver keeps the Winston point, so somehow they think this will all work and cut down on racing expenses and travel. We'll have to find out. Right now, all they want to do is travel the quarter mile in under about 5.3 seconds. Oswald far lane, Jim White near lane. Good race. Great race. And it is Jim White still in the 520s at 5.29, 281 miles per hour. Mark Oswald departs with a nice 538, 271. Just wasn't quite enough. Brock is on the starting line with car owner Roland Leon.
Roland, what do you think? 529 under these conditions?
Well, we run 25 and 29. We feel pretty happy about that. We'll just see what McCullough and the rest of them will run.
Real consistency, though, is going to pay off, you hope, huh?
We hope.
We hope so.
That's the name of the game.
Go get them.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roland.
Well, the consistency of the Hawaiian is certainly good today, and in drag racing, that's very, very important. And here's one of the cars that Roland usually measures his performance against, the Otter Pop Special of Ed McCullough. Ed has lane choice with a very strong 527 in the first round. But he'll be faced up one of those new young lions, Dale Worsham, only 20 years old and in a funny car. But it's crew chief by his dad, Chuck, and even though Dale only ran a 5:49 in the previous round, Chuck can step this car up. Let's go to Steve.
A 5:25 round one, a 5:29 round two. Dare we say today could finally be the day?
We've been a win looking for a place to happen, Steve.
I've used that line.
For about a year now, and we would like to get this, maybe Pheonix is the right place for us.
It appears to do it effortlessly. No oil, no smoke.
Yeah, Wes has got the tune-up real nice right now. Roland has supplied the good parts, and we're looking good.
And they got a fine shoe, might I add.
Thank you, Steve.
Well, I see a little smoke coming out of it there. It means at least they're going to put some clutch discs in it. Dale Worsham backing up, looking good.
Understand, this is only his third event as a funny car driver, and he's never driven anything else. Bernie Federley, well, he's had his watchful eye on Ed McCullough for thousands of runs down the nation's drag strip. They are a 5-time winner of the U.S. Nationals, heading out of Hemet, California. Has never won the Winston Crown. That's his goal this year. Up against, as we said, 20-year-old Dale Worsham. He doesn't even look 20. And his dad, to his credit, is bringing the boy along fairly slowly. We talked about their elapsed times earlier on today not being all that quick. I don't think Chuck has given the boy too much power, trying to keep him out of trouble, ease him into this whole thing. Ed McCullough in the near lane, the youngster over in the far lane, both cars based in Southern California.
You can bet, Steve, that Ed McCullough's already thinking about the next round.
The ace took the kid for granted, and he leapt on him. They both lose traction. The youngster recovers first and wins the race, but Don, big trouble for Ace.
Yes, it is. A tremendous fire, oil fire, no doubt. Look at the extinguishers blowing all of the halon in there, putting the fire out. Ed is coming out of the car. He's okay. He's a little warm, though.
Only one thing causes that kind of a fire, and that is an engine explosion. No doubt the connecting rods coming through the side of the block and all 11 or 12 quarts of oil, not to mention the nitro inside are ignited. There is NHRA safety safari already on the scene. And Don, let's watch this again. First of all, notice that Dale Worsham leaves first. You're right, McCullough was looking past him to the next round, and that's dangerous. McCullough loses traction, and then what happens, Don?
He backpedals the car. The engine, obviously hydraulics, out come the connecting rods. Big explosion in the car, probably blew some of the safety panels out, allowing smoke and fire to come into the cockpit with the ace, because you saw his uniform was all sooted when he got out of the car. But the fire extinguishers did their job. They kept it in there long enough without fire for him to get out of the car.
Linda McCullough with her husband and Ace. You did a great job of getting that car stopped. It could have been a lot worse with a lesser driver.
Well, Steve, it's just one of those things, you know. I mean, when that situation comes about, it's instinct, you know. Thing went out, smoked the tires. I pedaled it. When I pedaled it, you know, it blew up, and you know, then the fire came. It's a pretty good fire, so, you know, main thing, get the fire bottles on and get it stopped. So.
And they did their job.
Yeah, they did a good job. So.
Well, Linda, you've seen these before, but that doesn't make it any easier to watch.
No, it doesn't. They're all bad, and last year we were worried about force, and I don't want it to be us this year. It's not worth it.
No, indeed not. He's just fine, everybody.
Now remember, we saw in round 2 Top Fuel, a lot of fire came out of Craig Smith's header pipes, and we suspected there might be some engine damage. Well, Steve Evans has made his way over to the Craig Smith pit, and he has this report.
There is no engine change in Craig Smith's pits. However, there could have been, because they're replacing everything else except the cylinder block. It's the only thing left in the chassis that's old. As you can see, 8 brand new rods and pistons are going in. 6 still remain to be plugged into the cylinders. New bearings, new blower belt, a fresh supercharger. Everything but the rear end gear has been changed in this car. Let's hope they can get it in the lanes in time.
Well, sometimes it's really hard to get a car back together and make the call, especially with a team that's not been on the circuit and used to that kind of a thrash between rounds.
I'll tell you, this funny car matchup has a lot of personality. Glenn Micros in the Joe Paisano JP1 Oldsmobile up against Mike Dunn in the Snickers automobile. Mike Dunn used to drive for Joe Paisano. In fact, he won 2 U.S. Nationals titles for Joe. He's now living in Pennsylvania and working for the Ed Abel team, who put together this magnificent operation. Glenn Micros, Riverside, California, had his best ever outing just 2 weeks ago at the Winter Nationals, when in the semifinal round, he defeated Mike Dunn in that Snickers car. So there's a lot of friendship and a lot of rivalry between these two teams. Let's see what happens. Dunn away first. Micros charges. but not enough. Mike Dunn wins it with a slower elapsed time. He won it on the whole shot, 5:36 to a 5:35, 2:74 to a charging 2:80 by Glenn Micra. So it's Dunn who goes to the final four. Let's have one more look at it, Don. I think we'll see the car in the far lane lead first.
Looks to me like it was a beautiful starting line advantage taken by Mike Dunn. I got a kind of feel in my heart that he's a little bit more experienced than Micers. This is his first ride in a very fast car. This car of Paisano runs over 280 miles an hour, so you know that's a little something to handle. So maybe he was thinking about that. Anyway, he made the charge at the end, but it wasn't enough to catch Mike Dunn.
Nice hole shot and a nice win.
That was a close race. I knew I was going to have to get ahead of that car because I drove it before, and I know how hard that thing runs on the other end, and I was kind of looking over about 1,000-foot mark, and luckily we held off and got the win.
Your 36 beat his 35.
Yeah, it was a close race, so we didn't want to overpower the track. We stepped on a little bit, but I think the air got a little bit worse, and it was just kind of a push from the last round.
Can your dad put this thing in the 520s?
I don't know. I think he can. I know he can eventually. Whether we get enough runs to do it, we're going to step on it a little bit more next round, and it'll step up and run a little bit better. He's the best.
You betcha. See you then.
Thanks.
Well, his dad just happens to be Jim Dunn of funny car fame, and if anybody's got the experience, it's certainly Jim. Meanwhile, we have the final pair in the second round of funny car action, John Force versus Al Hoffman. As we go to the in-car camera on John Force's car, we see a very strange piece of equipment on the center of your screen that we don't see on anybody else's car. Steve took a look.
John Force and his crew chief Austin Coyle have a reputation for doing everything just a little bit different. Let me show you the latest wrinkle on Force's car. Now, this round hole is required in funny car windows on both sides by NHRA. In case of fire, the safety safari can get a fire hose in there to cool off the driver. This hole, that's unique to John Force, and he calls it the chimney. Again, we'll look inside. Now, notice at the firewall, there is a stovepipe. Really, that's stovepipe material you'd find on a wood stove. And here's the reasoning behind it. When a blower explodes on one of these cars, and John has had a lot of those, most of the fire and force comes out of the back of the manifold. Well, now when the body is latched down, you see that great big round hole up there surrounded by the silver screws? Well, that's the chimney. When the body is down, that lines up with the back of the manifold. Hopefully, they'll take all of that force and all of that fire and exit it through the smokestack. Force says that's all well and good, but he's hearing weird noises now, engine sounds inside the car that he never heard before. They're routed in there as well.
Well, the team obviously trying to figure out ways to not damage the body in those explosions and let that force exit harmlessly to the atmosphere.
Well, there is the BDS, that stands for Blower Drive Service Car of Al Hoffman. And there's a chalk mark on the pavement made by his wife, Helen, to make sure they back that car up in exactly the burnout tracks, where the track is the hottest and the rubber is down the best. Tom Anderson, crew chief, latches down the emergency hatch, and they had to change engines. We talked about that earlier. Al Hoffman qualified right in the middle of the pack, number 8 at 5:44, beat Tom Hoover in round number 1. Now, John Force picked up Budweiser's $4,000 bonus for qualifying number 1, and he took out Gary Ritter in round 1. But actually, it is Hoffman who right now has low elapsed time of the event for the breed. That 5:28 engine damage at 5:28 in round 1. Let's see if Hoffman's new power plant is up to John Force and his stovepipe. What a ride we had with John Force. Straight as a string. A car can't be driven any better than that to a winning 5:35, 265. Al Hoffman comes by on the right. He could only muster a 550 at 231 miles per hour with his new power plant. So the final four is set here at Pheonix. It'll be John Force versus Mike Dunn. Force will have the lane choice, but only by about 100th of a second. And for you kids out there, it'll be Del Worsham versus Jim White. White will have the lane choice by a country mile. And also a special thanks to the great guys from Air Evac for the super aerial shots on this crystal clear Arizona day. All right, it is top fuel, the final four, and there is Jerry Amato looking over the Valvoline special of her husband Joe. Tim Richards tuning on the fuel system just a little bit, and they will be up against Kenny Bernstein. These two are great friends in drag racing and in business. Dale Armstrong, happy to finally have a car that responds to his touch. Don Garlitz, this could be one of the best races of the day.
It certainly could. It would appear going into this round, however, that Joe has definitely got an advantage over Kenny Bernstein. Kenny has run good, but not as good as he should.
But there was a brilliant driving job off the starting line, and Bernstein, much to Jerry Amato's chagrin and Dale Armstrong's pleasure, Pole shot at Joe Amato. Bernstein wins at 4.99. Amato loses with a quicker 4.96. Let's go to Brock.
Congratulations. First time in the fours. Got to feel great.
Yeah, well, we picked the right time to do it, I guess.
You sure did. Great job.
A very happy crew, and for good reason, too. A brilliant performance out of both the car and the driver. And as we watch the replay, we see just how well Kenny Bernstein welded Amato to the starting line. Amato's car ran well, and he is no slouch on those starts. But in this case, Kenny Bernstein took a definite advantage. But Amato was actually ahead in this race at one point. But the tremendous top speed of the Kenny Bernstein machine, 288 miles an hour, wrapped it up. Now you see a perfect reaction time is 0.400. Now you add the reaction time to the ET and you'll see there was only 0.003 of a difference between these two cars at the end of the race.
You have joined the club. The last spot available, the ring is yours.
Well, that's fantastic. It means a lot. Krager's one of our sponsors. It means a lot to us to be in that club. It's an elite field, obviously, but winning what it's all about. And like I said, toughest run of our life against Amato, and the best there is, and we did good. That's what counts.
Some very good driving, I might add.
Well, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. All right. Good one, Joe. Good race. Good race.
Well, you can bet Kenny Bernstein is excited about being in that 4-second club, a club, in fact, that I'll never be in. He just took the last spot, Steve.
It wouldn't have mattered. Your wife, Pat, was going to see that you weren't in it anyway. All right, now we're going to find out who is going to race Kenny Bernstein in the final round. Will it be Craig Smith? This is the furthest he has ever gone from Odessa, Washington, or Frank Hawley in the Darrell Gwynn Coors Light Silver Bullet. Hawley has lane choice by a mile. I would think the crew chief on that car, Kid Binney, would set it up very safe here. Craig Smith had a lot of engine problems in the second round. They had a real thrash just to get it back together. Let's see what happens here. Hawley loses traction, has to get off the throttle. Craig Smith in a huge upset and a ball of fire. Crew chief Gary Beck says, oh no. And it's not yet finished blowing up, Don.
It sure hasn't, Steve. There's going to be a tremendous amount of work in the pits for that team to get ready to get into the finals.
Well, let's look at it one more time and we'll see that they left right together, Smith and Hawley. No advantage to either driver. And Hawley appeared to be hooked up and slowly but surely pulling ahead of the Washington Stater. But all of a sudden there, the clutch came in and there was too much power, Don.
Yeah, and then he backpedaled it and it blew it up. But Craig Smith just kept charging on, looking good. And then all of a sudden, something happened to his engine and that was the end of it. But he was a winner and that's what counts. So Craig Smith will face Kenny Bernstein in the top fuel final. Bernstein has a lane choice by a mile.
Well, Craig Smith will go to his first ever finals in his first ever year. And your first major engine explosion, a kaboomer.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. It blew the burst plate out of it. I don't know what to do now. I guess I'll have to go back and put another bullet in and go again, huh?
Do you have that depth of parts? You fed it a lot the round before.
Yeah, we still got enough parts to go another round. We should make it again.
Boy, I'll tell you, a little luck and a little tenacity, you could do it.
I can tell you there's no worse feeling than Frank Hawley is going through right now. He had it in the bag. The car should have won. They just misjudged the clutch a tiny little bit.
We're back at the NHRA Motorcraft Ford Arizona Nationals, and it's time for Final Four competition in the Pro Stock category. Tony Christian Chevrolet Beretta versus Warren Johnson's Oldsmobile. I'm Steve Evans along with Don Garlitz and Brock Yates. And Don, so far lane choice hasn't been a factor. Warren Johnson has it here, though.
Well, he's taken the lane that was repaired, so that's very interesting. I've seen just as many wins out of one lane or the other.
Warren Johnson has actually changed lanes from the round before when he was on the near side. Now he puts Tony Christian there. Great start by Johnson. Christian trying to make up that deficit. Cannot do it. Warren Johnson, 731, big speed, almost 190 miles per hour. You know, Warren Johnson, Don, has really been working on his driving, and it shows here. His reaction time of 4.3, and you said earlier, a perfect light is a 4.0. So he is 0.03 of a second away from that. And that's good in this category.
It certainly is. You can see from the start that Warren took a very definite starting line advantage, and Christian was never able to challenge him, as Warren has been running some tremendous speeds all day long. 188 in the previous round, 189 in this next round. Who knows, we may even see a 190 before the day's over. And as the two cars move down course, you can see Johnson continues to put distance on Tony Christian. It's something that's very unusual in this close pro stock racing.
Tony Christian felt the sting of Warren Johnson and his Oldsmobile at the starting line where you had him by 400s and the finish line where you had him by a couple of car lengths.
Well, I don't know if it was a couple of car lengths because I couldn't see that far back, but I thought it was a perfect race.
A 7:31?
We'll see what Darrell runs. 31 was pretty good. We bogged it a little bit. The track was actually a little bit better than we thought it was. NHRA did a real good job of preparation on this track.
You bet they did, and you are dedicated to stopping the Dodge.
I think we all are, not just me.
Somebody's got to do it.
See Warren Johnson already thinking ahead, putting the Dodge in the final. Meanwhile, the big thrash is going on in Craig Smith's pit. Every run, they've been burning this engine up, some sort of a fuel starvation problem. And now they're in the final, and the question is, will they have enough parts? Will they have enough time to get this car repaired in time to race Kenny Bernstein?
Well, we'll find out. We'll keep track of the action in the Craig Smith pits, but right now, it's time for more pro stock racing. Who will meet Warren Johnson in the final round? Warren doesn't think it'll be Jerry Ekman, as you heard him say. It'll be the Dodge of Darrell Alderman. The Dodge is so intimidating that it's starting to cause some repercussions. We saw Ricky Smith red light against it, figuring he had to do that. Let's see how Jerry Ekman handles the pressure of racing the quickest pro stock car of them all, the 1990 Winston champion Darrell Alderman. The Pontiac, the yellow car, that's Ekman. The red and white car, that's the Dodge Daytona. You're on board with Darrell Alderman as he pulls second gear, third gear, high gear. And he never sees Jerry Ekman till the last instant. It is Alderman into the final at 7:37. But listen to this. Ekman wasn't outpowered, he was outdriven. He ran quicker at 7:36. Alderman a huge speed, 189 miles per hour.
And here we see just a classic example of what can happen when your mind is on your competitor more than yourself. Ekman is late off the starting line. A 4:78 reaction time is not the type of driving that he does, but that's what cost him the race. Alderman was right on the light. He took a nice starting line advantage. The car did run good down course, 189 miles an hour, and I'll tell you, he needed every bit of it to be able to win this race. So that sets up the pro stock final. It will be Darrell Alderman versus Warren Johnson, and Alderman has the lane choice.
Nothing hurts a pro stock driver's ego more than being beaten by a hole shot. Alderman knows that, so he goes over and consoles Jerry Ekman a bit. And Ekman right now is looking at him like, you know, you were vulnerable and I failed to execute. There's a ray of hope in the Craig Smith pit area. Bernie Federley, crew chief for Ed McCullough, has found a pair of cylinder heads in their trailer identical to the ones that Craig is using. Crew chief Gary Beck says, bring them on. I don't know if they're borrowing them or buying them. It doesn't really matter. And they're getting so serious. Take a look here. Empty frame rails are putting in a fresh short block. So Kenny Bernstein may not have an easy go. However, if they can't find whatever is starving this engine of fuel, they may just leave the starting line. If Bernstein's in good shape, shut it off rather than ruining yet another set of cylinder heads, borrowed ones to boot.
Well, that's certainly good thinking on Gary Beck's part. Get that car to the starting line. You never know what Kenny Bernstein might do. With his reaction times, he could have a red light.
What a contrast we've got here. The 20-year-old youngster, Del Worsham, against the veteran, Jim White. Now, the amazing thing about the previous round was the light that Worsham cut. Almost a perfect one. Jim White better be careful. This kid might just strap it on him like he did McCullough. The kid leaves first, but way too soon. A foul start on Del Worsham, and oh, will that young man be sick. He wasted the quickest run of his life, a 5:36 to a slower 5:39. Jim White goes to the final round. Let's go to Brock Yates on the starting line.
Well, you take him any way you can get him, right? But still, a 5:39 puts him in the big show.
Right, it fell off a little bit. Looked like it dropped the cylinder, but we'll be all right.
You'll be okay. Go get him.
Roland anxious to get away from that interview, get down the end of the track, find out what happened to that Hawaiian. He knows that the 39 not going to win this race. Here we see the young Lion. He leaves a little bit too soon. Must have got intimidated by Jim White.
Someone once said, no matter how many bad breaks you get, if you race long enough, you'll get a payback. And you just did. The young man red-lighted. He'd have whipped you otherwise.
Yeah, he jumped out there pretty good. We had softened the car up, thought the track was going to be slick, and sure enough, the car went down there, drove around just a little bit. But
did you know you had won?
I felt sure I wasn't that late.
You never have been.
Well, I hope not.
Great job.
Thank you.
Sounds like Jim is not sure whether he was late or not, but I'm sure right now his mind is on this pairing, John Force and Mike Dunn, because he's going to race the winner of this round, and it's ET that counts. Who's going to have lane choice?
This is a very even matchup. Drivers of equal experience. First-class race cars, both have trailers full of lots of parts. John Force has one thing Mike Dunn doesn't, and that's an onboard camera for us to ride along. This is a pick-em deal. I don't think there's a favorite here either way. Force is away. Looking out that right side, we don't see Dunn. Dunn is a car length back. John Force goes to the final round for the second race in a row. 5:30 to Dunn's 5:36. Top speed for Force, 270 miles per hour. And there was no advantage off the starting line for either driver. As I said, a very balanced confrontation.
Yes, it looks like in the replay that they started exactly together. Both cars reacted very nicely. A little flash of fire there on Dunn's car might have slowed him somewhat, but Force's power just kept coming on. As you can see, as they move down track, he continues to put distance on Dunn. As they reach the finish line, it looks like a very easy win for John Force. He's in the final. So even though it looks like it might be an easy go for John, Jim White has run 20s. So the final pairing will be John Force versus Jim White, and Force has the lane choice.
Calmer today than I have ever seen him. John Force goes to the final round. 2 races in a row.
How'd she run?
5:30.
5:30. She's there. God, I wish I was 20 years old again. Racing these kids makes me nervous because you know everything works for them, and that's old guys. And I'm starting to feel the hole, Steve. Makes you plenty nervous up there.
Burnouts are complete. And notice Warren Johnson has taken the repaired lane, just like we speculated. And he comes into this round with a definite performance advantage over Darrell Alderman. So now the question remains, can he hold that performance edge?
Well, Alderman is going to have to dodge another bullet. He got out of the way of the one fired by Jerry Ekman when he wanted on a hole shot. Let's see what he can do with Warren Johnson. Alderman on this track has not had the dominant performance as he did at the Winter Nationals a couple of weeks ago. This car likes a very tight surface. This one has been just a little greasy for it. Warren Johnson is ready. The RPMs are up. Alderman's in. Let's just watch it. Now that's pro stock racing. Darrell Alderman had to overcome a hole shot from Warren Johnson. He whips him with a 7:31 to a 7:34, but the best driving we've seen from Warren Johnson in a long time. Even his son Kurt is smiling, though they didn't win it.
Well, when we watch the replay, we can see that Warren Johnson cut Darrell no slack whatsoever on that starting line. If he could have just held the performance of that Oldsmobile up, he could have easily won this race. And that's evidenced by the fact that he is still well ahead of that Dodge at the halfway mark in this race. But as they neared the finish line, the power of the Mopar began to come on, and he pulled right up to dead even. And it's remarkable that he was able to catch Warren Johnson with the type of starting line advantage that he took off the line. Let's take a look at the numbers. Remember, a .400 is a perfect light. Johnson has a .439 and a .473 for Alderman. But that 7:31 ET made up the difference, which was 1/1000th of a second.
You know, you've seen a good drag race when the first 2 words the winner says is, who won? Warren Johnson over to congratulate Darrell Alderman. That's 2 in a row.
Hey, I knew when Warren and I got beside each other it was going to be one heck of a drag race. And of course, I wanted to win, but I wanted to be a good race for the fans, too.
You were conservative on the starting line this time, taking no chances of red lighting.
Yes, sir.
So you figured you had the performance edge, right? Did I guess right on that?
No, I don't know what the lights were.
He left on you a bit.
Did he? Well, I knew that I was getting it down there close to rounds before, like a 4-4, 4-2, and a 4-4, and I sure didn't want a red light in the final.
Absolutely not. Again, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's 2 in a row for Darrell Alderman and his Mopar as he continues to pad his Winston points. Trouble. There's trouble in the John Force pits. Look at the crew. They fired up the engine. They found problems. They've torn the engine completely down again.
Well, time is going to be their big enemy now. The top fuel cars are already in the lanes. NHRA will go ahead and run them first. If then Jim White is ready to race and Force isn't there, could be a single for White.
All right, here is Craig Smith. They got that engine back together, and at least it made a burnout, Don Garlett. So far, so good.
Well, my congratulations to the crew, because I was over there, and they had a lot of work to do and not many parts to fix it with.
Well, here's Kenny Bernstein. They had very little work to do and a whole lot of parts if they needed them. There's a problem with Smith's car, Don. It won't go into reverse.
That's right, and they cannot back this car up unless they can get it in reverse, because the clutches drag and the car continues to want to go forward. So he will have to get off the track if they can't get it in reverse.
Kenny Bernstein is watching all of that as he backs up. NHRA official right on top of it. And I think there's a point here. They're just going to send him down the racetrack. Let's see. It's to the point now that even if he could get it back to the starting line, it would overheat the Bernstein engine, and there goes Craig Smith back to the barn. Kenny Bernstein will win the Motorcraft Ford Arizona Nationals by default. Now, he's got to make the run. He could just idle down the racetrack, Don. That's not his style. That wasn't your style.
No, I never liked to do that. I didn't like singles anyway. I like to run as hard as I could run, and it wouldn't surprise me if Bernstein doesn't do the same thing.
Well, he's got a taste of the fours now. He'd like to have another one. Dale Armstrong ambles away, doesn't have to worry about a car in the other lane because there isn't one. The long nitro flame should be visible now as the sun is behind the mountain. Oh, what a beautiful sight. And the top fuel champion rounds out the day with a 501 at 287 miles per hour. Brock Yates is at the starting line.
Yeah, well, it feels good, you know. It's taken us over a year. I mean, this is our first top fuel win, and I got to hand it to Kenny, though. He saved us in the semis.
Great work. Congratulations. You're great team.
Thank you.
The end of a long dry spell for the Budweiser King. A happy crew. They've worked hard. We watch this replay. This is the fuel racing that I love. Flames higher than the wings. This is what the crowd came to see. And even though there's no car in the other lane, Kenny Bernstein, the showman, made us show for them all.
Welcome back to the world of winners, Kenny Bernstein.
Oh, thank you, Steve. It's been a long 18 or 19 months. I'm telling you, it's been tough, but Dale and the guys never quit. Budweiser, Quaker State, and Mac Tool and Eagle Snack stuck with us and finally made it. I'm sorry that Craig had some problems over there.
A 501 in the final. You wanted another four, a deeper four.
Yeah, but we had to be cool about it too. It got cool this evening. The track got better, but the air got a lot better. We actually took a lot out of it, a couple of percent, a little bit off the clutch, so that tells you how much better the track was.
Well, let's not forget, there is one more race to be run. Here at Firebird, it is the funny car final, and John Force has made it into the lanes in time to race Jim White. Force will be in the near lane, White in the far lane. How do you see it, Big Daddy?
This could very well be the best funny car race of the entire day. Pay no attention to that 539 for Roland Leong. He has run in the high 20s, and Force just ran a 530. This is going to be nip and tuck.
What about that last second crash? Is that going to affect him at all, bother him?
If I was going to bet on anything, that would be it. And the only thing out would be maybe they put some parts on the car that weren't exactly that they wanted because there wasn't time.
All right, looking over the John Force car, the crew being very careful, making sure there's no leaks, anything that might cause a safety problem. Everything looks good. John Force, he won the opening race of the season, the Winter Nationals. Can he make it 2 in a row? Jim White has never won an NHRA national event. He's made it to the finals before, but always went away disappointed. No disappointment on this evening in Arizona. Roland Leong and the crew with their fists in the air for their driver, Jim White. A 530 defeats John Force's 540. 284 to a 271. He won it decisively.
Yes, he did. As we watch the replay, we will see that the start was ever so even. Force and White left almost tied together. Maybe just a millisecond of flames early on the White car. But something happened to the Force car. He had to backpedal it. He must have got a little tire shake. Force is real good at that, but when you're racing a car that goes 530, you can't backpedal and expect to win. Sometimes you can't even expect to keep your motor in the car, but in this case, Force continued on strong. Few sparklers come out of Roland's car, but what did it matter?
It may be dark down here, but I think the happiness of Jim White will shine through.
Oh, thanks a lot. Gosh, I don't even know where to start. I haven't practiced this one at all, Steve.
Well, the win looking for a place to happen picked Pheonix.
We're here, and it took 2 weeks to get it done, but we got it done.
A 5:30 in the final. Great job.
Thank you very much.
You've been waiting for this a long time. Where is all of this? Come on, give me some.
I'm just trying not to jump off the ground right now. I tell you, the guys just worked so hard all day. Wes did a good job. Hawaiian Punch, of course, have been right behind us all the way, and we can't say enough about all the guys that helped put this thing together. Roland's done a great job keeping Hawaiian Punch now for 9 years. We're just real happy.
We hope they keep coming for you, my friend.
Thank you, Steve.
The memory of this man winning here at the NHRA Motorcraft Ford Arizona Nationals may be the fondest memory of this entire event. Taking nothing away from Kenny Bernstein's first ever win, but he had won 30 times in a funny car. For Brock Yates and Big Daddy Don Garlitz, I'm Steve Evans. Thanks for joining us from Firebird International Raceway.
The executive producer for American Sports Cavalcade is Harvey M. Palish. Supervising producer John B. Mullen.
Congratulations.
The American Sports Cavalcade is a presentation of Diamond P Sports.